Continuing on with today's show, we're going to go into our third segment of today's episode. But to remind you guys one last time, if you have any questions or comments you want to make during any of the segments, please use the tip and donations link you see on your screen, GSMCPodcast.net. I mentioned it is a way for me to see your questions pop up in my chat box. I can read them on air and then carry the conversation elsewhere, make it more engaging. It's more fun for me that way, and it's also a big help for the show as well as all the other shows across the network. So again, the tip and donations link is gsmcpodcast.net. If you were able to use that with any question or comments, we greatly appreciate it. But in saying that, moving on to the next topic, my top 5 list of the quarterbacks I believe have the best chance of winning their next Super Bowl. Where is this coming out of? Why did I decide to do this on today's episode? Well, if you remember a few days ago, I mentioned that episode of Deep Cut, a barber podcast style show with the host being Vic Blends, an influencer slash barber, had Tom Brady on his show, asked him more famously where we talked about Tom Brady mentioning him not closing the door to retirement. He also talked about the next quarterback he really likes to win his first Super Bowl, to which Tom Brady responded that he really liked Josh Allen. Even with the departures of Stefon Diggs and everything like that, he still believes in Josh Allen as one of them, probably the most likely for him to get it done and win their first Super Bowl. So that got me thinking, that's a good choice to pick. You can't go wrong with Josh Allen. He is one of the best quarterbacks, very talented, can win you games just on his own. And then it got me thinking of who else could be on that list. There's a lot of great quarterbacks in the NFL, ranging from different ages to different play styles, skill sets. There's really a lot that you can pick from. I narrowed it down to 5, and there were some tough decisions I had to make, honestly, because there are too many good quarterbacks that I had to leave some off. To start, my honorable mentions on this list: Justin Herbert, honorable mention; Jared Goff, honorable mention; Jordan Love, also a bit too young in my opinion to really be considered one of the favorites. Trevor Lawrence as well, a little bit more experience, but his team's still lacking something. I don't know exactly what, but it just feels like maybe another receiver, obviously. Something on defense as well. They don't seem like a solidified, guaranteed team to even make the playoffs at this point, so I couldn't include Trevor Lawrence. And surprisingly, I just hyped up Josh Allen. I like him as a quarterback. He is very talented, but it's not Josh Allen, it's me. Their team, I just think, lost too many pieces to me. I've mentioned before the departures on defense. Stefon Diggs is huge. Not to say that they're not going to address it in the draft, but to meet it where Josh Allen is in his career, trying to continue this train that they're on, this journey of reaching the playoffs, to try and get guys to buy in, it all has to fall so perfectly in the NFL to battle against injuries. The transition period, it has to go smoothly for a lot of these players that they're going to be drafting, a lot of new players that they're going to expect to be starters. It just seems too perfect to happen sooner than any of these other guys I have on this list. So, unfortunately, I don't agree with Tom Brady. I couldn't include Josh in my top 5. So, in saying that, I will start with number 5. My number 5 on this list is Joe Burrow. And my reasoning for him is quite simple. He's the only quarterback to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs since 2019. Cincinnati finished without a winning record without him this year, or just in the past. And this year, I think they were 9-8, and they were just all right. You can see that they were in games a lot because they do have a lot of great players on their team. They were obviously missing their all-world quarterback to beat them, to get them over the hump in those tough games. They've reached the AFC Championship game each time Joe Burrow has played at least 16 games and basically just been healthy heading into the playoffs. So I don't think that is just a coincidence. He makes the difference for them. And I think the biggest thing right now with T. Higgins sort of having a change of heart, this could be the year that they go all in, funny enough, with the Bengals. This could be the last year of T. Higgins, so they could see it as extra motivation to get the most out of T. Higgins, this core group that they have. If they're going to lose T. Higgins, they might as well make it the best year that they have. I anticipate them, again, being in that conversation around the top teams in the AFC. So there's more incentive there, I think, internal incentive to perform there. Their defense is all right. It's good enough to get them timely stops when they need it, and they improve the offensive line with Trent Brown. I think Joe Burrow is in an adequate position to win his first Super Bowl. Then, moving on to number 4, a guy that just edged him out, I think is Jalen Hurts. He is my number 4 on this list. He is basically in a prove-it year, if you want to call it that, a critical year, a make-or-break year, whatever label you want to call it. They were the number 2 seed with a poor defense. They resolved all their coordinator dilemmas now. They brought in Kellen Moore to kind of command that offense now that is stacked up with all the talent that they need. Like I mentioned, they figured out the coordinators. They brought in this talent. They still have work to do on defense, but offense should not be the issue as to why they're struggling to put up points. They've struggled to score in the red zone over the last few years, so that's something they have to figure out. And with everything being changed and resolved basically on offense, the only thing you still have there that you can look at as a possible reason why it's not working could end up being Jalen Hurts. Hopefully, with this criticism and the added pressure now, especially to Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts, like I just mentioned, it could sort of boost them up and just get them to click and really hone in on taking advantage of all this talent, because not many teams around the league can say they have a surplus at wide receiver, one of the best running backs, a very good tight end, a great offensive line. Jalen Hurts, I'm a believer in him. Rough year, but I think truly that he is a great quarterback. So that, the addition of Saquon, more help on defense, I'm sure they're going to address it. Mainly just edge rusher depth, secondary help, and linebacker. Similar to Cincinnati, even though they need positions on defense, I think that their defense is solid enough as it is right now to get them stops with the offense that they've built up. I think it's good enough to get them through tough games if Jalen Hurts and this offense can click. That's the biggest thing. I expect Jalen Hurts to bounce back. And one of the biggest things, just lastly on Jalen Hurts, is that this core group of guys, Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, Mailata, Dickerson, Hurts, they're all signed for the next 3 to 4 years. So they're really entering their prime years of this Super Bowl window that everybody talks about. I think it starts now. I think they have a bounce back year. He's my number 4. But again, he doesn't edge out my number 3, who is Brock Purdy. I just think the 49ers team is in a better spot than the Eagles are right now. They are one of the only teams in the NFC, maybe the only team in the NFC that can compete toe-to-toe on offense with the Eagles. Quarterback, whatever your opinion is on Brock Purdy, stat-wise, he had a great year last year. Better numbers than Jalen Hurts in some categories, so you can pick either or there just based on the year they had last year. 2 of the best running backs, McCaffrey and Saquon, Debo, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Brandon Ayuk. It is a heavyweight fight if these teams meet up in the playoffs yet again this coming year. So the offense really isn't the issue. The defense is where the 49ers, I just think, have the edge with Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, I expect to come back, Travarius Ward. I just think they have a very solid, solidified core group of guys just doing it all over again, running it back. I expect Brock Purdy to be better. The only thing they really just have to figure out is the Brandon Ayuk situation. If they bring him back, then they're just running it back with the same starters that they had in the Super Bowl. I think it's too many times that they've gotten unlucky and just not gotten it done. They're going to get it done eventually. They are stacked up on offense and defense. I think it's only just a matter of time before they get their first Super Bowl in I don't remember how many years. Get Brock Purdy his first Super Bowl. it's more favorable to me. I trust it more than I do the Eagles. So Brock Purdy is my number 3. Then hitting into the top 2, a little bit of the surprise here at number 2, but I'm sticking with it. I've officially jumped on this train, the Houston Texans train. I have C.J. Stroud as the second quarterback most likely to win a Super Bowl on my list. I talked about Super Bowl era, Super Bowl window with the Eagles heading into their prime, Super Bowl window now with all their players. I think this could just be the start of this Super Bowl window for the Texans, which is why I have CJ Stroud so high, because he's only just starting to start this journey that they could go on for the next 3 to 5 years. He's only going to be in his second year. Tank Dell's going to be in his second year. Nico Collins is still young. Bring in Joe Mixon, a young head coach. Their defense is great, adding pieces on that side of the ball. Last year was not so serious. It was a lot easier in a way because nobody really had expectations for them. The pressure wasn't really there. And that's really the main concern now in the second year jump that you mentioned with some of these guys, some of these players, some of these teams, that it was easy the first year because nobody really knew what to expect. There was no game plan around you. Now seeing how they adjust to that, coaches, coordinators really scheming for their weaknesses and trying to exploit them, that's really where you see the maturity of this team. And I mentioned they have a lot of young players, so they're going to have to maneuver that and gain that experience. There's definitely going to be some bad, ugly games this year, but I think because there is so much untapped potential on this team, they're just on the start of that journey, like I mentioned. CJ Stroud impressed everybody, one of the best rookie seasons in NFL history. I'm really liking what they did. They don't think twice about the moves that they make, at least this offseason. It just seemed like they were dead set on improving. They lost a player here, fine, we're going to go and replace him with this other player. It just seems like they know what they have in-house, and they have to take advantage of it. That mentality, combining it with a quarterback that you were fortunate to find in that draft and have him be your franchise guy, it all lines up well. That's why I have C.J. Stroud so high. And then to just round it off, I had to have Lamar Jackson on this list. I haven't mentioned him all episode. He is my number 1. He is on the thumbnail of this video, so that sort of gave it away. He has been in that conversation talent-wise with Patrick Mahomes, how special he is, his ability to run the ball. They were the number 1 seed in the AFC last year. Then you just go and add Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs. Even if the conversation is around not having a top wide receiver, it's not in their nature to really have one. Honestly, with this conversation of Lamar having a true weapon like that, it almost doesn't complement what he does best. You saw them trying to throw the ball in that AFC Championship against the Chiefs, and everybody afterwards was questioning why they went away from who they were, running the ball. They were one of the best teams at doing that. And I just think having a top wide receiver would take this team out of their comfort zone. You have to just use Derrick Henry and use Lamar as much as you can to the best of their abilities. So I don't think a number 1 wide receiver is necessary. I think they prove that. The biggest question for me is trying to address that offensive line and defense. They lost a few pieces on that O-line, so you have to get that figured out. 2, take advantage of Derrick Henry and everything that he can provide for you. But I trust that they're going to do that. I'm sure they're going to do that. And then on defense as well, you lost Patrick Queen, Geno Stone, good pieces, starters on that defense. So plugging those guys in, it is fortunate that they only had really those 2 guys leave. I love the development of Kyle Hamilton. He really burst onto the scene in his first year. They're as well in a great position now where everyone is really entering or is already in their prime years. Same with Lamar. Just talent-wise, development-wise, you see where he's gone from where he started to where he is now. It's a great jump. It's a perfect example of taking a quarterback late, developing him, sitting him for a year or 2, and then turning him into something like this. I think he's got the best chance to win a Super Bowl, his first Super Bowl out of this list. So that's my list. That's who I have from 5 to 1, with Lamar Jackson rounding it off there. I'd love to know what you guys think about it. If you want to leave it in the chat box on this episode, throughout the remainder of this episode, feel free to do that, or leave it in the comments as well. I would love to know what you guys think. If I got the order wrong, if you think somebody else should be on there, let me know all your guys' thoughts in the comments below. But we'll be moving on to the last segment of the show, talking about the draft and the Washington Commanders, what they're going to do with that number 2 overall pick, how close are they to making a final decision on it. Their general manager, Adam Peters, talked about it yesterday. I'm going to tell you all that he said and my reactions to it as well. So stick around. That will just be coming up in a few seconds. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.